Good evening, Jessica Van Vonderen with ABC News. Federal Labor has revived debate about Australia becoming a republic, promising to hold a referendum on the issue within its first term of government. Bill Shorten made the announcement at the ALP state conference in Townsville, creating a contrast between himself and passionate Republican Malcolm Turnbull. Here's political reporter Jane Norman.
This is the proudest moment of my life.
As leader of the Republican movement, Malcolm Turnbull was about to get his first taste of electoral defeat. 55% of Australians voted no in 1999, backed by the staunch monarchist John Howard.
He was the Prime Minister who broke this nation's heart.
It is good to be here in Queensland.
Bill Shorten wants to be the Prime Minister who mends it.
A Shorten Labor government will take the first real steps to have an Australian head of state in our first term in government.
He's promising a national vote sometime after 2019 with one simple question.
Do you support an Australian republic with an Australian head of state? Yes or no?
If the answer is yes, Australians would return to the polls for a second time to settle the trickier question of which model to adopt.
This is a very exciting day for anyone who supports an Australian republic. It's the first time a major party leader has committed to a national vote on this question this century.
Like his political opponent, Bill Shorten's an avowed Republican, but up until now, it hasn't been a priority.
So if you're asking me where we would spend all our political capital, for me, jobs is the issue for 2014.
I'm sure this will get them jobs in North Queensland. They can talk about a republic, and after that, then they can talk about 4-year terms.
Barnaby Joyce has dismissed Bill Shorten's latest push for constitutional change, saying it won't fix any of the problems voters are facing.
We do not get letters saying, you know, what's going to really help me out with a wage rise or take the place of a job is if you made the join a republic, mate, I'm sweet, that's beautiful.
Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
Both sides agree it's inevitable that Australia will become a republic. But Malcolm Turnbull's made it clear he doesn't want to reignite the campaign while the Queen still reigns.
Many, I would say most Australian Republicans are Elizabethans as well.
We are not Elizabethan. We are Australians.
The next election isn't due for another 2 years, but Bill Shorten's already framing his pitch around the issues of fairness and inequality. He'll expand on that theme tomorrow when he announces more details about Labor's tax policy, this time targeting trusts, which some say overwhelmingly favour the rich. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
The Premier used the ALP state conference to announce a policy shake-up to look beyond cheap interstate and overseas businesses for government contracts. Anastasia Palaszczuk instead wants to choose locals first, even if they're more expensive. She denies it's a move towards protectionism.
In keeping with her rhetoric this year, the Premier took the chance to slam the Prime Minister yet again.
Malcolm Turnbull is too busy fighting off Tony Abbott and his Conservative mates to focus on Queensland.
And brought the message home by highlighting the tough economic times in the north.
And my God, it must hurt after what we saw with Queensland Nickel, with the families here losing their jobs.
During her speech, she explains a new policy to put local Queensland contractors first for government tenders, even if interstate or overseas businesses offer cheaper alternatives.
We are not talking about wholesale protectionism. We are talking about putting Queensland first.
So a large amount of these Queensland taxpayer dollars go interstate and overseas in accordance with these free trade agreements. Those free trade agreements haven't been working for Queenslanders.
A fiery Bill Shorten had his own election promise focused on Queensland to spend $1 billion from the Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund on tourism projects.
You are a beautiful, marvellous, welcoming state. You are the natural destination for a rising Asian middle class with new money to spend. And we can do this and tourism better than anywhere else in the world.
It's not about growing the economy. It's not about providing more and better paying jobs for Queenslanders. Bill Shorten, quite simply, would be a disaster for Queensland and a disaster for Australia.
This is the last state conference before the next election, and while the broad church of the ALP has been divided on issues like Adani, come the campaign they'll need to make sure they stick to their key message of their fight against inequality.
While we're at it with about inequality, We'll apply the same tough approach to dodgy labour hire firms.
Next year's conference will be back in Brisbane and will be held after the upcoming election. Josh Bavis, ABC News, Townsville.